The government has appointed current Revenue Secretary Sanjay Malhotra as the new RBI governor. Now, one element of this decision was a surprise, but another element was not. What was a surprise was that incumbent governor Shaktikanta Das was not given another extension, as most people in the government and outside expected would happen. However, once that initial surprise passed, it quickly became clear why the government chose another civil servant to replace him. Sanjay Malhotra is a 1990 batch IAS officer and has worked in the finance ministry since February 2022. Now, why the appointment of a civil servant as the RBI governor is not unusual or surprising is because that's the way it has largely been in the past. Consider this: Sanjay Malhotra takes over as the 26th RBI governor. Of these 26, just 10 have not been civil servants. That is, more than 60% have been from the civil services, from the Indian Civil Service in pre-independent India, the Indian Administrative Service, the Audit and Account Service, and the Economic Service. In the last 21 years, since 2003, a non-IAS person has held the governor's post for just 5 years and 98 days of this entire 21-year period. That would be Raghuram Rajan and Urjit Patel. Another important reason why the appointment of a civil servant to head the RBI isn't a surprise is because of the 10 non-civil servant RBI governors, 7 of them did not even complete a 3-year term, let alone a 5-year term. So let's take a look at these 10 and see why they left early. Let's start with the RBI's very first governor, Sir Osborne Smith, who took over on April 1st, 1935. He was a banker and his term was for just 2 years and 90 days. He resigned over differences with the finance member of the Viceroy's Council over exchange rates and interest rates. That seemed to have been enough to convince the government of the time to only look at civil servants for the next 33 years. The next 7 governors over this period were from the Indian Civil Service or the Audit and Account Service. Then came the economist B.N. Adarkar, the next non-civil services RBI governor, who took over in 1970. He holds the dubious distinction of being the governor with the second shortest term of just 42 days. It wasn't his fault though. He was a temporary appointee until his successor S. Jagannathan from the Indian Audit and Account Service could take over. K.R. Puri was the chairman and managing director of LIC before he took over as governor of the RBI in August 75. He stayed for 2 years and 6 months and was removed because the Janta government came to power. He was succeeded by M. Narasimhan, who remains the only governor so far to have come up from the RBI system itself. However, he too only served for 7 months. We then jump to Manmohan Singh, who took over as governor in September 1982 and served for 2 years and 120 days. There's no official reason for his resignation in 1984, but a few months later he took over as the head of the Planning Commission. However, Manmohan Singh's resignation seems to have surprised the government because it then appointed a stopgap governor of the RBI. Amitav Ghosh was deputy governor of the RBI before he took over as governor for just 15 days before his successor could take over. He holds the record for the shortest term of any RBI governor. Now we come to the 2 exceptions to this trend of non-civil servant governors having short terms. The economist Dr. C. Rangarajan took over as governor in December 1992 and enjoyed a nearly 5-year term. Perhaps this convinced the government that non-civil servants could do the job, and so they followed this up by appointing Bimal Jalan as governor in 1997. Bimal Jalan first held the post of governor from 1997 to 2002 and then was reappointed till 2004. He resigned before that second term ended in 2003 to take up a Rajya Sabha seat. The next decade saw 2 terms of 5 years each by the IAS officers Y.V. Reddy and then D. Subbarao. Then we come to Raghuram Rajan, popularly known as India's rockstar RBI governor. An internationally renowned economist, having served as the IMF's chief economist and the chief economic advisor to the government of India, Rajan served out 3 years as RBI governor, but then had to resign as he was not granted an extension. Of course, a lot has been written about his differences with the government at the time over things like demonetization, which was just an idea at the time, and Rajan's own outspokenness. Rajan was followed by Urjit Patel, another economist, in September 2016. Patel resigned after just 2 years and 98 days. The official explanation was that he had personal reasons for his resignation. However, former Finance Secretary Subhash Chandra Garg, in his book We Also Make Policy, said the key issue was over electoral bonds, who would issue them and whether they should be digital or physical. The government and Urjit Patel disagreed on these issues, and so Patel left. So that's your list of non-civil service RBI governors. It's a relatively short list, and almost all of them had very short tenures, and in several cases, contentious relationships with the government. Which is what brings us to why the government prefers a civil servant in the RBI's post in the first place. The answer is clear. Civil servants know how the government functions, what its requirements are, and importantly, they know that the RBI's so-called autonomy has its limits. As long as the governor broadly accepts the government's borrowing program and doesn't push back hard on things like dividends and interest rates, things will be fine. And the civil servants understand this. Basically, the government wants somebody to run a steady ship and be a good administrator. Leave the headlines to somebody else. The RBI Act of 1934 is the legal basis for the foundation of the RBI, and why I mention this as the so-called autonomy of the RBI. The RBI Act of 34 lays out the RBI's powers, responsibilities, relationship with the government, and its roles. Importantly, the Act says it is the union government that appoints the RBI governor. Now, it doesn't exactly specify how this process is to work, but former senior RBI officials have told ThePrint that it all comes down to the Prime Minister's choice. The PM, of course, consults the Finance Minister, since the FM and the Governor have to work closely together, but the final decision, of course, is usually the Prime Minister's. The Appointments Committee of the Cabinet then makes the announcement. So, taking all of this together, the historical preference for civil servants as RBI governors, the contentious relationship between the two most recent non-civil servant governors and the government, and the need for a level and calm head to help steady a slowing economy makes it not surprising at all that Sanjay Malhotra, an IAS officer with experience in the finance ministry, is our new RBI governor. But on that note, that's all from me. Thank you so much for watching.